Hey, everybody, welcome back to Practical Liberty. I have a returning guest. I think it's actually my first returning guest, Rachel Mazza. Rachel came on in August of last year to talk about my plan of launching a product, and I hired her to help me, build all the infrastructure out and get that ready to launch. And so I said in that podcast that when it was all out, I was going to have her back on to kind of discuss how things went, what changed from the original plan, what went well, and what went terribly wrong. And so that's what we're going to do today. And in addition to getting in a lot of other stuff that she's getting up to these days. So, Rachel, welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, I'd like to put a nice little bow on this. We came on getting ready to do a thing, and now you've launched, and it was a great success. We get to talk about that.
Yeah, it's fun to bookend these things. But before we get into my stuff, can you kind of just give people? It's been that's 8 months or so that
Yeah.
we've since I've had you on. So what has your last almost year been like?
Oh my goodness. So it's been quite a wild ride. What I do for those who haven't met me is I help people build and scale profitable offers in businesses. So if you've got an offer, I can help you streamline and step out of the day to day. Or if you want to build something like you're working for done for you clients and you want to package up your knowledge and sell it as a course or an offer, that's what we did with Henry. And so I've been working on that with a couple of key clients, doing some really big launches. And now I want to do my own thing, teaching people how to develop semi-passive income offers. I call it semi-passive because nothing's truly passive unless you got those dividend paying stocks, right? Or you inherit a bunch of money, but semi-passive. So that's what I've been working on.
That's great. Yeah. Royalties can be considered passive income, but they always end at some point. And the nice thing with having your own product is that you can keep revamping and pushing it out. So I'll put a little bit of work in, get a whole bunch of money out. Hopefully. That's the idea anyway.
That's why I love this term semi-passive, because it's like, even with royalties, you got to write the thing first, right? You can't just like money in the mailbox. So I just set expectations. That's my whole goal with that.
So first, I want to thank you because you were pretty instrumental in me pushing me basically to get everything that I needed to get done for the course to even launch in the first place done. You helped me get the website ready and up. You helped me get all the email sequences set up. Like a lot of this stuff that I just, I was avoiding a lot of the work. And so you had your little checklist is like, can you do this? Can you do this? And every week, even when I was kind of disappearing for a couple days at a time, you were always there pushing me. And so I have you to thank in a large part for getting this thing out.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that's what I figure. People are busy, and especially when you're a creator, when you're a visionary, it can be hard to implement when you're still marinating on all those ideas. It takes so much energy. So my goal was to say, I'm just going to do this stuff, and even if it's not exactly what Henry wants, it's a lot easier to go back and edit something that someone's already created than have to sit down and just like grind through and set it up from scratch, right? So I'm really glad that helped.
Yeah, so let's kind of start with where I was originally, when we first started working together back in August, what I was originally planning on doing. And that was a kind of libertarian focused course called The Cornerstones of Liberty, right? Which is part of the whole framework that I really believe in. That's still the framework of this podcast. Security, wealth, awareness, and network. Those are the things that you need to be free. So I was going to do a mini course on that. And I just kept stalling. I couldn't make myself do it. Like by January, I had like 90% of the course done, but I couldn't pull the trigger on it. Like it didn't feel quite aligned. Like, how often do you see that type of resistance pop up among the people you work with building courses? And what do you think is kind of behind it?
Yeah, I see it a lot. And it's hard for me as I'm a quick start, right? If we talk about Colby scores or whatever, which means I just go and I break stuff and figure we'll fix it later. And even if it's not perfect. And so that it's always really good for me to get those checks and balances that say like, okay, there's some resistance here, and then have that conversation with you as a client and say like, okay, what's happening? Because my job is to push you to get it done. But if I'm pushing you to do something that you don't want to do, then that's not good for either of us, right? So I have seen that before, but usually it's a factor of me needing to push a little bit harder or go figure out where the resistance is, take care of that for them and get it out of the way, get it off their plate. But with you, it was different because you're so self-aware. And I know that you work with Brent and do a lot of deep work on yourself. And I'd love you to explain a little bit about how that decision came about, because that changed the whole game for everything in a good way.
Yeah. So the security, wealth, awareness, and network. The thing that I was comfortable with that I had built mostly out was the wealth aspect of it, which wealth, I really account it, or I guess I should call it financial security more than wealth, because it's not about becoming, a multimillionaire and never needing to work again. It's about becoming financially independent. So you're not really depending on a job or other people to basically make your living to survive in the world. It doesn't mean you need to have $1 million in the bank and live off savings. It means that your income is independent of another person's control.
Right.
And so I'm really comfortable talking about that. I was building out the security module, and I just was like, I don't feel as I'm pretty good at it, but I'm not. I have no background in it. I have no, like, I'm listening to other people, so I felt kind of like I was ripping off other people's advice to put out there, and
Yep.
that just, it didn't feel authentic to me. It's something I really believe in, but I couldn't make myself do it, and I felt like a fraud. And it's not that, I think so. In Brent's module, there's the your child self, your teen self, and your adult self. And the fraud part was actually, a lot of times fraud comes from your child self, where you feel unworthy and broken and not good enough. But in this case, it was coming from an adult place of me saying, like, no, I'm not actually the best qualified to teach this.
Yeah.
And in copywriting, we always tell people, especially new product owners, it's like, well, it doesn't matter if you're the best, you just have to be a step above everyone else, right? You have to be the next step forward to keep moving people on. And that's true in some things, but I don't feel like it's true when literally we're talking people's safety, like personal security. I
Yeah.
don't want to
Truly
give
life or
you,
death, right?
yeah, and I don't want to give people advice that I'm following, but I'm not an expert in it. So
Yep.
I felt weird giving people advice on, like, how to store their guns in their home, because I have safes all over that where I store my guns, but I don't want somebody following that advice and somehow their 6-year-old gets into it and accidentally shoots himself in the foot, like, or worse. So
Yeah.
it felt like the stakes were too high for me to not be full expert in that area. So then I thought about, like, well, what if I just cut out the security part, just do wealth awareness and network? And I'm pretty good at networking. It's actually one of my skills in my skill stack, but I don't know, there's not as much to teach in networking. Like, it felt like a really flimsy module. And so the awareness is like, okay, here's the books to read and here's the podcast to listen to. And here's ways of thinking about it. But I talk about that in the podcast all the time. So at the end of the day, I went to an intensive in Austin with Brent. We spent 4 days kind of thinking about it.
Wow.
By the end of day one, he was like, first of all, the only thing you should be focusing on is wealth. It's the only thing you can sell the program on. First of all, like, that's the selling points are all, here's how you keep more money, here's how you make more money, here's how you become more independent with money. And then he's like, so why are you including the other stuff? I was like, well, it's the whole framework. It's this whole idea I have. He's like, yeah, that's great. But why are you teaching the other parts? Like, teach the thing you're the best at, because you're uniquely good at becoming financially independent. And then don't worry about the other stuff. Like, do podcasts, maybe do like free bonuses, whatever. I don't care. Just pay. If people are going to be paying you, teach a thing that you're one of the best in the world at. So it literally, I felt so relieved after that first day of knowing, like, oh, okay, I can just teach about, like, money and making money, and, like, something I'm qualified at, something I'm good at, something I have a lot of interesting, unique things to say about. Um, and so, yeah, it ended up being the course. We changed it to Breaking Free, which is all about become a high income freelancer. And man, I built it. So it took me, what, 6, 7 months to get to that first point of, like, I have 90% of this, Cornerstones course done. And I don't know, I could probably push through. And how do I sell this thing? To a month after that thing, I had launched it and was selling
Yep.
after that
Yep.
intensive. It's just, when I had the right idea, I was able to just run with it and feel really confident and good about it.
But you still get to serve your audience talking about those other critical things, but you get to do it in the frame of this podcast and having guest experts and partnering with other people who are experts. And so that's the thing is it's not like you're leaving people in the dirt on all that other stuff, right? You get to
Yeah.
focus on what you do best and what you're an expert at and what you're uniquely qualified to teach. And then you get to leverage other people and those other skills you have, like networking, to serve your audience on all those other aspects. So that's great. And it's so natural, right? All that resistance
Yeah.
is gone.
Yeah. So I guess we could kind of talk about how the launch went if you want.
Yeah, I would love that. So, okay, you go ahead.
No, when we first talked, I was saying, when we were originally talking about the Cornerstones course, I was like, yeah, I don't know. My list is about, it was at that time, it was like 700 people, I think, when we were talking in the early days. I was like, yeah, I think 15 to 30 to kind of get the pilot module out there and see how people do. And then when I focused in on the freelancing, I was like, okay, I think I'll get to 30. I think I'll get 30 people in this course. If I do 50, I will just be, okay, I have something solid if I get to 50, because, at a smaller list, 50 sales is a decent amount of sales for a
Well, and
couple
remember,
$100.
you were also going to do it live at first, which that's a
Oh,
lot of people to manage, right? Like we were like, all right, maybe we cap it at like 30.
yeah.
So that changed too. Now it's evergreen. You can take a lot more people and support them in a different way.
Yeah. So we'll talk about that in a second, because there was a couple things I changed just to make myself actually get through it. But yeah, at the end of the day, I thought if 50, this is a solid product. And at the end of the day, after 1 week of promoting it with a 50% off discount code for like the first movers, I sold 85 courses. So 85
Amazing.
memberships. And yeah, I mean, I've gotten nothing but positive feedback so far. And
No
I'm
refunds, right?
no refunds at all yet.
Incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, they still, there's still a couple weeks that people really don't like it. But I don't know, given the feedback, there's always some refunds. I won't be too offended if a couple people are just like, this isn't for
Part of
me.
the biz.
But
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, it's been pretty incredible and I'm incredibly stoked about it. And I already have a couple people hitting me up and asking me if they can be affiliates for it.
That's awesome. That's that we were just talking about that, right? Like what can we partner on? Because this is so
Yeah.
exciting. And now how are you supporting the group? Because you said you changed that as well. You were going to do everything live and then you were going to do just the coaching live. And what did you end up with?
Yeah. So I ended up, one of the problems I was having is I didn't want to teach it live. I wanted to be able to sit back and really think about it. And I wanted to be able to edit things out if I flubbed it or said something wrong. There's a cool element to live teaching, in that like you can respond to people in real time. And it comes off, and some people see it as more authentic, but I don't know. For me, I wanted to pre-record the lessons. I wanted to, I had page-long bullet point outlines before I started recording. I wanted to
Yep.
build out the PowerPoints and really think about it. And I'd slur words and I just stop recording, say I'm over. Yeah, so eventually I'm going to re-record this on video, but for right now, it's just literally PowerPoint slides with my voice behind them. Um,
Yeah. Keep it
it's
simple.
the content is out there, and I had to do that because I had so much resistance to the live event, or to be me being on camera. I'd be so uncomfortable, and then the editing would look choppy. So I did the simplest thing I could to make sure I got it out, and I
Yep.
can always go back and redo this later.
Yeah, I talk about this all the time when I coach freelancers. We talk about putting out authority content, right? So start building your authority, share what you know, share your expertise. Not only are you going to get people starting to recognize you for an authority about the subject you're talking about, but also if you're approaching clients or approaching other networking opportunities, it's really cool to be able to say like, oh, I just wrote an article about that. Let me share it with you, right? It's conversation opener as well. But a lot of times people have so much resistance to it because they think they got to go like start a YouTube channel and produce these videos and be like polished and pristine all the time. And it's like, no, just like go like write something on LinkedIn. You can do it however best serves you and how you can be most authentic and get your best stuff out. And that's exactly what you did. You're like, this is how I get my best stuff out. I'm a copywriter. I write VSL. So I'm just going to write each of these lessons like a VSL and deliver it so that it can be received in a really easy way. And personally, for me, when I take courses, I actually hate live training. Like, I love live coaching where I can ask questions and things, but live training, I always feel like I have such limited amount of time for that kind of stuff. I would much rather be able to sit down with a recording that I know is complete and concise,
Right.
watch it on double speed if I need to, go back and like take notes. I absorb it much better when I can see a pre-recorded training and then have a live interaction with someone to ask questions about it. I think most people probably do.
Yeah, I mean, so let's talk about resistance, because it's one of those, it's such a kind of nefarious force in any entrepreneur freelancer's world, is that there's all these points of resistance that sometimes you just have to get it through it the first time. Like, honestly, I feel like the next course I do is going to be a lot easier to get done than this
Yep.
one was, because I've been through it. I've seen the process. I know the necessities now. I know what you
Yeah.
have to have. Um, and I know kind of how much easier. So actually, it was funny because like I learned that about a half-hour video to make, because most of the modules I have are around, I think the shortest one is like 7 minutes. The longest one is like 50 minutes. Um, uh, to basically make an hour of video, though, I figured it takes me about 7 hours of actual work,
Yep.
which is, there's, I think, 5.5 hours of content in the course so far, and I haven't even. So there's 4 modules in it, right? There's preparing to break free, which is all about what you need to know to get set up to be a freelancer. There's getting clients, which is, of course, everybody's favorite topic in freelancing. There's
That's the good stuff.
no, so there's managing clients, which is module 3. And that's actually one of the most important ones for scaling your freelance career. And so many people are so bad at managing clients that
Yes.
it's what really holds a lot of people back. So it's funny, the first one and the second one, what people buy for. The third one and the fourth one's scaling your career. That's what people will benefit the most from in the long run.
Yeah. Those who stick around, right? That's an important
Yes.
part. You got to finish the thing.
But I haven't even started the videos in the fourth one. I'm adding about 1 or 2 new videos a week to the course right now.
Yeah.
I just launched it. I was like, I had the entire outline done of what I wanted to be in it. Um, but I was like, I don't have, I didn't have a sales letter when I launched. I had like 6
I
bullet
remember that was one
points.
of the biggest points of resistance. I'm like, so Henry, about that sales copy for the launch that's coming up.
Yeah. I had a headline, a bunch of bullet points about what's in it. And, I wrote decent bullet points. So there's a little bit of a tease. I had, my testimonial block, which sells it because it's Steve Harvey and David Deutsch and Paris Lampropoulos and Clayton Makepeace and Marcella. So I have some credibility there. But yeah, it was just a checkout page. I wrote a bunch of emails and just sent them to a checkout page. What was interesting about that is I haven't written the sales letter yet. That's actually on my schedule for, I got to get it done by the end of this month. It's on the big whiteboard schedule. But I figured I actually learned a lot about what sells this course based on the emails that got the most clicks and the most sales.
Yeah.
So it was kind of an interesting way to launch the course.
And it's like a deconstructed sales page in a way. You can use all that now to assemble the sales page.
Yeah, it was fun. Although, like always, the deadline emails got the most sales.
Yeah, of course. Of course. I know it's like as a marketer, you're like, I hate doing this, but it just works so well whenever you have that real urgency, that real scarcity.
Well, the funny one, so I had a coupon code, right? Because the first week I was selling at 50% off. So I had this coupon code. And originally I was like, here's the coupon code, enter it to get half off. And I did, I think, 7 refunds the first 2 or 3 days of partial refunds of
Oh,
people who
right.
just
Because
didn't
people
enter
weren't
the
using
coupon
it.
code.
Yeah. Yep.
And then you actually helped me find that, you can just automatically apply the coupon code in the link. And I never had a problem since then.
Yeah. It's like all these little things that you can't know everything, right? But I've gone through so many different launches with Kevin at Copy Chief and other clients where I'm like, oh man, we had so many customer service snafus because people don't pay attention. And this is what we always say is like, people never read and they never pay attention. And it's frustrating as a writer because you're like, I have put everything in the email that you need, but just read the email. But we know that people don't read. So you really do have to make it as simple as possible and as foolproof as possible. And just something as simple as using the link that automatically applies the coupon code changes everything. It changes the time that you spend. It changes the customer experience. It's such a simple thing that you just learn by messing it up in the past, right?
And the funny thing, so I sent like 2 emails a day for a week promoting the course. And I think it was the 3rd or 4th best sales email was the second email that day where you showed me that thing. And the subject line was like, I'm an idiot. And it was, oh, I just figured out that I could automatically apply the coupon code so you don't have to worry about missing the discount. Click here. That was it. And that got like the 4th most sales out of any of the emails I sent, which was hilarious to me.
Authenticity, right? People are like, oh, this is a human and he's going to teach me things as a human. Like I hate when people do that kind of stuff on purpose. Like it's a attention tactic.
Oh, the
gimmicks,
but if it's,
but if it's authentic, people know, you know what I mean? Like people can tell when something's authentic and when it's a gimmick. And that kind of stuff like shows it actually like humanizes the whole experience, which is, you don't want to do it all the time because you don't want to mess things up, but it's not always a disaster if you send something out with the wrong link.
But yeah, so another thing that we had discussed is doing group coaching calls as part of the course. And I just decided that was another point of resistance, as I didn't want to do the group coaching call. So I just offered email coaching, which people have loved. So, you have a question about something. So I have one of the things in there is your skill stack statement. So discovering the actual combination of unique talents and skills that make you, set you apart as a freelancer.
Yep.
And then the viral pitch, which is basically getting you in. It's a way of pitching yourself to anybody that gets you in front of, it gets you warm introductions to your best clients.
Yeah.
And so most of the coaching feedback that I'm doing right now is just, hey, here's my skill stack. What do you think? Or did I do this right? And here's my viral pitch. What do you think? Did I do it right?
Yep.
Which is great because I love just being like tweaking those things or fixing those things or saying like, yeah, this skill doesn't quite match with these based on my experience, but here's a great skill stack statement or a great viral pitch based on what you've said these other 3 are.
Yeah. And you're a copywriter and you're a copy chief. Like that is so natural for you to coach that way because that's how you've coached your entire career, right?
Yeah.
Is in writing. Like that's how you do it. So it's about going with your natural affinity, but also that resistance is important. Oh man, that's a tough one because sometimes you really do need to push through the resistance and just do it, like Nike style. But sometimes you really got to listen to it and say like, why is there resistance? And I feel like that's a really tough line to walk. So do you feel like if you hadn't gone to Brent and had that conversation with him, Brent Charlton, for anyone who doesn't know who we're talking about, I'm sure Henry talks about him all the time. But if you hadn't gone to Brent, do you think you would have recognized that resistance was beneficial? Or do you think you would have just been like, what's wrong with me? And felt like you were the problem?
I think the best part about going to Brent is recognizing which state the resistance is coming from. So there's in the child state is often resistance can come from being defective, feeling defective, which is not true, but we have these experiences in our childhood that make us feel like we're not good enough. The teen resistance can come from perfectionism, is like, I have to be perfect here. And if it's not perfect, then I can't do it. And then adult resistance comes from like recognizing what's actually going on.
Hmm.
And, you're not perfect, but you also don't feel the need to be, you don't have that perfectionism. You don't feel broken. You can
Yep.
assess things kind of in a rational, critical thinking way. So yeah, that work has been extremely helpful because some of the resistance, like actually the live coaching resistance probably does come from a little bit of a teen place where I feel like I have to teach this stuff perfectly and I have to have the perfect answer all the time, on the spot. Like the nice thing about writing is somebody sends me an email and I don't have to respond for an hour. I can sit there and think about it and let it
Right.
marinate and then give you the best answer I can. On a live call, you have to spit it off the top of your head, which I feel like I can give a pretty good answer off the top of my head. But yeah, so maybe that live coaching resistance does come from a teen perfect state, but I don't know. It was also important for me to push past it. If I felt too much resistance and it would have stopped me from getting it out, um then it would be a problem. But I pushed through it to just get it out. And maybe I can always go back and do that in the future.
Yeah.
I'm actually talking with Marcella, actually, because she's going to be teaching another bonus lesson in this course about, I had a surprising number of women buy the course just based on my list demographics. Um, and
Every
women,
woman on your list.
yeah, almost. Um, but yeah, women face very different challenges than men in freelancing. And, I know a lot of men are resistant to that idea, but I don't know. If you think men and women are the same, then I don't know what to tell you. We don't treat each other the same. We don't interact the same. So there are female specific challenges. Anyway, Marcella, I hired her to come give a presentation on kind of the female specific challenges and how to get over them. And then I was like, yeah, I don't know. I've been thinking about this coaching thing. Do you have any interest in doing it with me? Because she's a great freelancer as well. She's like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. As long as I just have to show up and help you coach, I'll do it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
having that second voice of experience there actually is kind of a way of me hacking past the resistance. So we're
Yep.
probably going to sell a coaching package that way.
Awesome. And that's another thing is partnering with people who can help you take either push forward the things that you have resistance on or just take it off your plate. Like I'm talking to Marcella about doing a coaching program as well. And it's like she doesn't love to create the thing and like deliver the thing, but she loves coaching and she's so good at it. And she's so good at nurturing and motivating and teaching in a way that is easily received. And for me, I love coaching, but I hate doing it myself because I get hung up on having to have all the answers, just like you, like having to have the perfect answers. So I would love to partner with someone like Marcella because I love building things and creating things. That's why I thought that we would work well together because I was like, I'll build a thing. I got you. Okay. Just tell me what you want in there and I'll make sure that it's all lined up for you. And it's really is just working with someone who can complement the areas that you have resistance on is a game changer, but also it creates options for you. So for example, we worked together to set up this first initial Cornerstones program, completely pivoted into something different, but all of that structure is still there. So now when you want to create this and make this a scalable evergreen program, all of those product delivery emails are there and all of the automations are there and everything's set up to just insert it into the welcome sequence in your list. And all of those pieces that we created thinking ahead for something bigger than the first piece that we were trying to create together, they're already there and the structure's there. So now you can scale exponentially no matter what you do. And so it's important. It's important to partner with people and also kind of think big picture, not just get stuck on the one thing that you're trying to do.
Yeah. So let's talk about kind of scaling this from here because I have an
Yeah.
interesting challenge now because I have a product out there. I'm starting to get some testimonials. Most of the testimonials I have so far are just like, oh, I really love this piece of it.
Yep.
So I want to give it some time to breathe so people can get through all of it and go out there. I had actually a guy today email me saying he got his first freelance gig, which is really cool to hear.
Excellent. Yeah.
But I want to get some testimonials in. I need to write a sales page. And I have a couple of I have some friends that have rather large email lists and are rather good at promoting. And they're willing to sell this or to send to their list as an affiliate, which would be really cool. I think given the list sizes, it's going to be like 150,000 people will
Yeah.
see the course between all their email lists, which is pretty cool. But I don't have a bump offer. I don't have an upsell. I don't have it's just so far, it's just this one thing.
Yep.
Um, and one of my idea was to sell like a coaching back end, but I had to cap that. And they're all like, no, don't cap my back end upsells. Like that doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense for me. So yeah, I've created a problem for myself in that I have an offer. I know the offer works. I have to do a sales page, which I think I can handle. But then yeah, there's all these other pieces that I have to get done. And so I'm almost having the same resistance to going out in that like, ooh, I got to do all this work again.
Yep. I don't know. I think that you can leverage the things that you would do naturally to promote the course and use those as the assets for all those upsells and bump offers. Like, for example, let's say you go do a workshop with Marcella and it's a one-time workshop. Maybe it's like $100 and you help people, I don't know, overcome resistance or overcome like imposter syndrome or whatever it is, right? To starting this, these offers that they're creating or this freelance business that they're creating. And then you can go use that as the bump or the offer, right? And you would do that anyway to promote the course or to promote your partnership together. And then you've already created that asset. And so I think you got to remember, like, it's okay to double dip, right? Or you've got all these other assets from the rest of your career that you now give away for free or sell as like an upsell. Those can also be assets that you use.
Yeah. So for the copywriter list, I have a bunch of copywriting trainings that I can go out there and sell as an upsell, essentially. That would be valuable. So yeah, man, I have to think about that per list, but I could do different upsells per list. That would make sense.
The thing I'm most excited about though is everything that you would do manually to launch this. It would be so easy to automate so many aspects of that, right? Like in your welcome sequence, when someone first comes into your world, let's make sure that we're building into the PS of those emails or into those emails mentions of this thing, right? It'd be so easy for you not to have to rely on affiliates by just baking awareness of this product into your world when people come in and interact with you at every different level. And so that's important too, to make sure that you're creating those automations for yourself as well as other people.
So I don't know if you've been following Chris Orzakowski's whole Spark Loop journey, where he took his email list to, he grew his email list from like 10,000 names to 25,000 names or something like that in a month.
Wow.
Just by paying $7 a name. So I mean, you could do the math there for 15,000 times 7. But according to him, in his public feed, so I'm not giving away anything. They're paying off like his normal customers or his normal list subscribers will. So, you know, his value per email subscriber is way more than $7 per name. So I'm actually going to test that out. I talked to the Spark Loop people. I'm going to get in on their partner program. And yeah, I think if I can grow that and paying $7 per name, if I can capitalize it at like $10 per name with, you know, at a $495 course, that's what one out of every 50 or so people have to buy. 2% conversion on new email subscribers. It's possible.
Well, and think about it. You would pay X amount of dollars for Facebook ads to send people to a lead magnet and try and capture people that way. But these are people that are already raising their hand and say, yeah, I want to be on your email list, right? And so it's just a way to shortcut that and a more effective way to get those names. Yeah.
There's a lot of interesting ways to grow without affiliates that I think people forget about, right? This is such like the affiliate marketing world is so big, especially it's one of the easiest ways to get into marketing. And so most people know about it. Yep. Whereas the ad buying world can be incredibly like I could spend $10,000 on this and not make a dime if I don't know what I'm doing, which is terrifying to people, right? Affiliate is you only pay them after they paid you. So it's, there's a lot of different ways in, and I'm going to explore them all, but it's an exciting time because it's kind of a blank slate company right now. Like I'm on track to make, so this launch did something like $21,000, which is great. That's awesome. For a week. Right? $21,000 in a week after 6 months of slaving, but definitely paying for itself. I'll probably be on track between that and the consulting. The business is probably on track to do 200 or so on right now. I don't know how the affiliates are going to go, so that could change a lot.
Right.
But yeah, it's a viable business at $200,000 for your basically first year in business.
And how big is your list right now?
So I got it up to 900. When I was really pumping the launch, it grew up to about 900. And then I lost about 70 of those to unsubscribes because I was just blasting the list with sales emails for a week.
Bye. Let them go. Let them go.
Yeah, that's what I mean. If you're not interested in it, then, you know, fine. Off the list. That's saving me money at the end of the day. So yeah, it's back to about 8. Actually, so I still get some coming in. So I think it was 865 for the email I sent out today. So that's okay. Awesome. I'd really like to get that to 10,000 over the next, year or two. But that's a challenge. And the more I work with affiliates, I think the more my name will get out there and the more people will jump on the list. So
Yeah, and the podcast and everything. But also it's like you want people that want to be there, that are engaged. Like I had an issue when I was building my list. I like when I first started my list, it like quickly got up to like 3,000 people. And I realized that about 2,500 of those were all bots. And it was
oh
like, you know
no.
what I mean? And it's like you find those things as you're starting to build. And it doesn't matter how big your list is, it matters how many people are responding and opening and clicking. So that's the thing. Like I would much rather have a super engaged super fan list of 1,000 people than 10,000 people that barely open your emails, you know?
Well, and it's funny because you never know who's actually going to open your email eventually. Like I had someone email me today. The launch closed April 2nd or something. We're recording this on the 19th. Um, I had somebody email me today that had signed up when I was promoting like this big discount. And then they said, "Hey, did you do that yet?" It's like, I sent 40 emails about this launch. How could you
People
miss it?
don't read.
Every single one of them they missed. And they clicked through the link and they were like, "Hey,
Yep.
it says it's $495, not $247. That 50% off. What happened?" I was like,
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. So Kevin Rogers always says this is like, I don't care if they don't want what I have. I care as if they don't know that I'm offering it. Right. It's
yeah,
like, if you get people like that are saying like, hey, I didn't know you were doing this thing after you send like 10 million emails. Sometimes you can't help people. You know what I mean? You're like, I sent so many emails about it. But when people say like, oh, I'm afraid of emailing my list too much, or I'm afraid of selling too much, then I'm going to turn people off. People are there to like hear what you have to offer. And so you're doing them a disservice if you're trying to hide things from them, right? And be like, oh, let's have a very delicate conversation. Maybe I'll just like drop this little sales link in there. You have to tell people what you got, right? Otherwise, you're doing them a disservice. And then they're going to be like, why didn't you tell me about this? I really want this. Why didn't you tell me? And now the doors are closed.
well, I really like how Ben Settle trains his list, and he calls it training his list. There's something to buy every single time he sends an email out, and if you don't
Yep.
like that, unsubscribe now. So
Yep.
I don't quite want to be that aggressive. Ben is his whole he's himself. There's nobody else like Ben Settle. Um, but I do want people to know that I have things to sell, and
Yeah.
in the PS at least of every email, there's going to be something for you to buy if you want it. And
That was a that was a big thing when you first started the list, because talking especially to the libertarian crew, a lot of times they get offended that you're trying to sell them something, right? And that was a big hurdle that you had to figure out how to speak to that when you were figuring out your niche and where you wanted to live.
yeah, it's how to turn the liberty message, because a lot of people, especially I got a big bump from being on Tom Woods' show in subscribers, and a lot of people they're really only follow him for the liberty thing. They don't care about entrepreneurship or business. They care that honestly, a lot of people just want to complain about the government, which is, dude, I do it every day. But at the same time, I want people who want to do something about it, right? I want people who want to be free. It's about practical liberty. It's
Yep.
about the practical steps you can take in your life to become free,
Yeah.
not
What are you going to
just,
do about it?
yeah, exactly. And I'll talk about some of the I don't want to bring it up because YouTube's going to squash us, but there's plenty of issues that I bring up, especially in email, about all the ways the government's messed up. Like I went into the whole history of the tax code in today's email, and complain about Woodrow Wilson implementing an income tax in 1913, but also here's how you can save money on your taxes today,
Yep.
right? The
Yep.
practical step. I'll bitch about the history, but then what's the practical step you can take?
Well, and that's how you serve your list too. It's like, okay, you're telling me about all these problems. Like, yeah, I want to know how to fix it. It's very natural to do it that way.
Yeah. Um, so there was another before we started recording. You were talking
Yep.
about a book that Marcella actually recommended to you.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. So Marcella gave me a book called Quit, which sounds counterintuitive. It's all about, like we talk about all the time, that perseverance and grit are very highly prized in our society, right? But I love this book. It's called Quit by Annie Duke, and it's phenomenal. I've just been like listening to it while like doing chores outside and stuff like that.
and Annie
And
Duke is the poker player, right? If I'm not
yeah, yeah.
mistaken. Yeah.
Yep, she was a professional poker player, and she quit poker, and this is kind of her book about why. But actually, I don't know. She might still do poker, but it's about why she quit certain hands, even when she's up and things like that.
Okay.
And it talks about, I love the science in it, and I love all the examples and the research in it. It's fascinating stuff. Like you learn about people who climbed Everest, and it's so funny. Like all these movies and things about Everest, it's always the people that died that you hear about. You don't hear about the people that quit because they're happy living their life somewhere, and it's not an exciting story. But Um, there's a lot of practical advice in this book for how to use quitting as a strategic decision making tool rather than you tried something and you failed. Right. So things like it talks about creating your own quitting criteria or kill criteria. And it gives examples of like when you're in it, when you're in the thing, it's really hard to make a rational decision about when you should turn back, when you should quit. So do that beforehand. It's like if you're climbing Everest and you say, if we don't get to this base camp by 1 p.m., we know that we will not be able to safely turn around. We'll probably
Mhm.
die unless we somehow get to the top. So if we don't reach here by 1 p.m., that's our kill criteria that we're going to turn around and go back. Right. And so things like that, you make those decisions ahead of time. So if you are pursuing, if you want to be a professional Olympic sprinter, then you look at what everyone who achieved that was doing through their life. And it's like, okay, well, I have to run an X minute mile by 14 years old at this point. And like, you map your progression and you choose your quitting criteria. If you have a startup and you say, okay, well, if we're not profitable by this date, then we're going to turn back, So you set that criteria ahead of time and you choose a date and a status. Like we're profitable. I can run this fast. I get to this base camp by this date, right? So as long as you have a status and a date, that's all you need for quitting criteria. But it also talks about how you know when to quit, right? And she says that whenever the right time to quit always feels too early. Because if it feels like if it's the right time to quit, you're probably like way past the line when it's still serving you. There's definitely diminishing returns happening when you feel like, maybe I should have quit. So it's important to set those ahead of time and then use it as a strategic decision making tool rather than like, oh shit, I messed up and now I got to drag myself out of this hole.
It's funny because it's almost the same conversation we were having about resistance.
Yeah.
It's the opposite thing, right? Look, sometimes you really have to push through. And I guess it's interesting figuring out the times to quit versus the times, because how many of the most famous success stories in the world happened like long after everyone told this person, like, you need to do something else. And then they pushed through and
Yeah.
but then they're the one in the million that does make it versus the other people that got left on the side of the road, burnt
Yep.
out and never able to recover.
But
So
for
it,
every one of those stories, there's a Muhammad Ali who should have quit 10 million times over until basically he was like neurologically broken because of all the hits to the head. And he was like doing like fights in like a cockfight ring in Barbados because no one would let him fight in the States because he was so messed up. Like, you know what I mean? There's all these for every story of a person who persevered and had grit and came out the other side successful. There's another story of someone who just completely broke themselves and everyone around them because they should have quit when the world was telling them to 1,000 times over.
yeah, it's tough because we all, in our own heads, we're all the one that's going to make it.
Exactly.
That's what we tell. Or, well, I guess not everyone tells themselves that. Some people never start because they say, I can never be that one. So it's an
Yep.
interesting combination of personality traits you have to have, because there's a lot of times there's one part that you should be quitting in either a freelance career or a business, whatever it is. Like, I know a lot of people that really went all in on direct response copywriting, and they wanted to be the long form, sales letter, competing with the best of the best. And then,
Because it's sexy.
yeah, but they eventually quit that and did something, I don't know, like email marketing, which is way less sexy. And then they ended up making $300,000 when they had never made 100,000 as the long form guy.
Because way
So
less resistance, right?
yeah, but they strategically quit on one part of the dream, not the dream, right?
Yeah.
It's quitting. It's not quitting everything. It's
Right.
quitting the thing that's not working for you.
Well, and there's all this fallacy, I think, that quitting is easy and persevering is hard. I would say that they're equally as hard. Like I think that grit and quit are like two sides of the same decision. You know what I mean? So if you have a choice, they're just two sides of that same choice. Like, do you choose to like persevere and really double down, or quitting can be equally as hard? And I love this concept of the sunk cost. Like there's this all this research says that the more that you commit, the harder you will double down when you are failing. So like they talk about like train lines that were trying to be built in the mountains, and there was no possible way that it was ever going to happen, but the governments just kept spending more and more and more because they had made the commitment to do it, and to pull out would have been seen as an epic failure and waste of taxpayer money. So they just spent way more taxpayer money for something they knew was impossible. You know what I mean? Like, or if you're like in a college major and you're almost all the way through and you know for sure that you are never going to want to work in that industry, or you absolutely hate this, you'll spend more money and more time finishing that major rather than saying like, okay, I'm just going to accept this sunk cost and not spend that money for something that I know is a waste. And it's like, we all do this. We double down on something that we've committed to. Even this is even in like Cialdini's influence book, right? We double down on something we've committed to because we said we were going to do it. And it's actually, we'll lose more going after it than we would if we just like accepted the sunk cost that we have already spent.
Yeah. Have you ever read, so Charlie Munger, who's Warren Buffett's investing partner for the past 50 years, he has a really interesting article out there about the cognitive biases. So sunk cost fallacy is one of the major cognitive biases, but the reason that he's been able to make billions and billions of dollars is because he recognizes his own cognitive biases as they're happening. Now, I could say there's been a couple times where he didn't, but we're all human. But it's a very interesting article. I'll post the link in the description because
I'd love to read it.
Understanding your own cognitive biases and where you're going to make mistakes, because this brain doesn't work right. Like it doesn't work as logically as we like to all pretend it does. We're not logical thinkers. We are still just animals. Like the what's it? Thinking fast and slow. Daniel Kahneman goes into this. Is you have your slow brain, which is your critical thinking brain, but your instant reaction brain is where all the cognitive biases lie.
Yep. I think it's actually harder for people that are really self-aware. Like I think that we are, and we hang out with a lot of people who are really self-aware and are always like working on ourselves, right? And I think it's harder because you make these decisions and you're self-aware of why you're doing things, like whether it's your inner child or your teen, that kind of thing. And you're like, I know I'm doing a thing. I'm still going to continue the thing, even though I recognize that this is bad. It's almost like it's harder to make that decision to stop when you're aware of it, than it is to just like blindly go along and like get advice from someone. I don't know.
Well, and you think you can outsmart it.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Yeah.
This is the problem is, I have a very high opinion of my own intellect, and I have for a long time, but I needed so much help to get this product out in the first place. Like, so first of all, I hired you, which was a huge kick in the butt. And that was the first thing that really got it. Then you brought me along to Kevin Rogers' mastermind down in Knoxville. It was, which was huge. That changed the entire course of the podcast, right? We came up with the framework. He helped me like really put my thoughts of what I was doing into the framework. We changed the whole name of the podcast to Practical Liberty right after that. And then that final kick in the pants was Brent saying like, what are you doing? You hate like these other 3 modules. Just do this one. This is what you're good at anyway. So it's so important to have that outside wise counsel, right? You don't want to just take advice off the internet. That's one of the big problems.
Seasons guides.
Yes, people that have been there and done it. It's so important to learn from those people, no matter how much experience you have. You have to go in and, it's one of those things that you can't outthink reality, right?
Yeah.
And you can't always see reality clearly because of all those cognitive biases. So your help, Kevin Rogers' help, Brent's help, it was crucial for me, and I'm going to need a lot more help as I move forward.
Yep. Coaching and partnership and collaboration, but mentorship and coaching especially are so powerful. And I've met people that just do not believe in coaching. They're like, I'm not going to pay someone to tell me what they think. And I'm like, I wouldn't have done anything if I didn't pay people to tell me what they think. Like, that's like literally how I've done everything in my whole life. And it's just, to me, it's the greatest hack, is to go to a seasoned guide, some sort of wise sage who's seen around the corner from where you are. Like, you're going down the street, there's a corner, they've seen around that corner already. Like, why wouldn't you go to someone like that and ask them to help you make less mistakes? To me, it's a no-brainer.
And there's so much information out there it's very good. Like, when I was first starting copywriting,
paralyzing though.
I read John Carlton's Kick-Ass Copywriting Secrets over and over, and I got so much value out of it, but I didn't accurately know how to apply it until I started getting mentored by Jed Canty. Him saying like, yeah, I know he says that, but like, look at this, and this factor. That's why we have to do it this way. So there's a lot of information that's really good out there and is accurate, but when you're writing a book or putting out a video, you can't cover every situational example. So that's why the coaching is such a crucial part of it. And going to people with experience who have, like you said, been around that corner, and they're like, hey, you're going to trip right here if you don't watch out.
Yeah.
It's
Actually, it's interesting too with the coaching. Like it also helps you figure out when to quit and when to push, right?
yeah.
Like we just had a conversation in my accelerator mastermind the other day, where this guy was like, one of my members was doubling down on this client that was driving him nuts. And he was trying to like go through like, okay, should I negotiate with them about this? Should I give them an ultimatum? And it was like, it sounds like you need to drop the client and find somebody better. And it's like, it wasn't even like an inkling of a thought that was a possibility, right? Like, sounds like you should quit and just find something better. Like it's hard to see those things when you're in it too.
It's funny. I had one of my coaching students last week. He's just getting burnt out. A really smart dude, really good copywriter, but has like 5 different projects going on. And
Yeah.
my advice was like, first of all, you need to take a week off. Like, I know he has to wrap up the project he's working on now, but then I'm like, you need to take a week off and you need to focus on these 2 things. Like, drop the other 4 things. Like, yeah, so it is quitting, but it's
Yep.
strategically quitting. It's doubling down as much as it's quitting. It's both at the same time, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, your mind can only handle so much. I don't care how smart you are. I don't care how much energy you have. Yeah, you have to focus in your life to get anything done.
Well, and you go through chapters in your life. I remember being like, I was always like hustling and quick start all the time. And I remember being like 23 and doing like 10 million things. And I could still like party all night and like wake up at 8 a.m. And you know what I mean? Like you go through chapters in your life, you need different things in your life too. And I'm not saying like slow down as you get old necessarily has to happen for everyone, but other things become more important to you too. And you need to make sure that you're creating in a way and building in a way that allows for those shifts. Sometimes you need to sleep until 10 a.m. and for 3 weeks in a row. Like, you know what I mean? Like you need to make room for how your needs shift as you do as well.
I think you have to recognize the aging process in some ways. I remember, I think it was 2011. David Deutsch, Paris Lampropoulos, Marcella, and Leah Carson came to Philly when I was there. And I was this young hotshot freelancer. I remember having a conversation with Paris where he's like, yeah, it's like, so how much time do you spend writing a day? I was like, probably 8-9 hours.
Oh my
and at the
God.
time I was writing, I was 24 years old or 20, something like that.
I did the same. I would write so much when I was in my 20s.
And Paris is like, if I write for more than 3 or 4 hours a day, my brain is fried. And,
yeah, I'm done. The same for me.
Yeah, at the time, Paris was making well over 7 figures when I was like struggling to get $100,000 in the door. So like, I was like, I couldn't have done that 100,000 at 24 if I wasn't working my ass off, because that's what you need to do. But today I cannot imagine writing for 9 hours in a day. Like I would be pudding by the end of the day.
What even would like come out? Like, what would you even write about for 9 hours?
It would be gibberish.
Yep. Yeah. I think that's it too, is you learn how to more effectively use your time and skills too, where you're just like young and dumb and going fast in your 20s, you know?
So inexperienced. Yeah, I think I was just getting out way more bad words, like getting out way more crap, because I had to get it out of my system to practice it. But I wouldn't have the energy.
You got your reps in. That's important.
Yeah. So glad I quit 9-hour day writing.
Yeah, that's another thing. Like I also was just like working like all the time, and I got burnt out and then like forgot how to work hard after getting burned out. And then I had to like, you go through these cycles, right? It's important to make sure that you allow yourself to go through the cycles, but also sometimes you got to prioritize other things than work. Like if that's the chapter in your life where you got to focus on family or girlfriend or whatever, like you can't have it. Actually, you can have it all, just not all at the same time. So you got to choose what you're going to focus on right now.
All right. We've been going for almost an hour now. I do want to give you a chance, because I know you're going to be releasing that, what do you call it, SPIP Corp.
So working title.
Can you tell people just a little? I know we mentioned in the beginning, but can you just talk about it and tell people where to go to find out more?
Yeah, sure. So like you, Henry, I always want to help people find freedom and become more autonomous. And I always say, like, kind of take your power back from being reliant either on a job or clients or whatever it is. So I've got a SPIP plan. It's a semi-passive income plan. And if you go to rachelmazza.com/SPIP, SPIP, you can get the guide for free. And then what I'm going to do this fall is I'm actually building it out into a 90-day coaching program where I'm going to take you through my process for how I help Henry and people like Henry to build their own offers, take their knowledge and expertise and package it up into something that you can sell either as an evergreen program or a course or a consulting offer, or maybe if you don't have any ideas of your own, how to do that with other people's ideas as an affiliate or a JV partner as well. So that's going to launch sometime this fall. But right now you can go get the guide at rachelmazza.com/SPIP. and that's free, so you can grab it now.
Awesome. And I'll put the link down below this video. Well,
Awesome.
Rachel, this has been a great experience working with you. And I'm, as we expand further, we're going to probably end up working together on a bunch more things in the future. So
I hope so.
I really appreciate everything you did for me. And I appreciate you coming on to recap it with me.
Yeah, it was fun. I'm excited for the next one.
All right, everybody, stay free. Hey, if you thought that video was good, please click the like button and don't forget to subscribe. It really helps me out. Thanks.